Today on Sports Central, we go over our next scheduled preview of this offseason, and it's going to be for the Ole Miss Rebels, one of the top teams in the SEC in the 2021 season, as this team went 10-3 overall. So an outstanding season for Ole Miss in 2021. About this team being 2022, that's what we'll be going over here today. We'll be going over the players this team will be losing, who they'll be returning, and also looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting out with some notable games from last season, and this team being 10-3 overall. They had a great season, and we knew going into 2021 that this team had a lot of talent coming in and returning after the 2020 season. And so Ole Miss, this team was expected to be good, and they were a very good team. 10-3 was their overall record. They did take a couple of tough losses, lost to Alabama by 21 on October 2nd, but then again, the Crimson Tide were outstanding last season. They beat Arkansas, what was one of the best games of the season there, 52-51. That was an outstanding matchup. They beat Tennessee by 5, beat LSU 31-17. Also beat Texas A&M by 10, which was a huge win. Did lose to Baylor in their bowl game, which obviously is unfortunate, but considering Ole Miss's circumstances, Matt Corral leaving the game early due to an injury, that certainly had a big impact on that matchup. Otherwise, Ole Miss definitely had a good chance to win that game, but huge credit to Baylor though as well. The Bears were, they played outstanding to say the least in that matchup. Definitely, they were very worthy of winning that game. But in the end, once again, just a good season for Ole Miss, going 10-3 overall. Here's a roster preview going into next season, and this team does lose a lot of key players from 2021. It does concern me a bit. Matt Corral, your starting quarterback, is gone. Put up 3,300 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 picks last year, also a 68% completion rate. But Jackson Dart is coming in from USC. We'll get into the transfers and all that in just a second, which this Ole Miss team has got a lot of activity in the transfer portal. But Matt Corral is gone, so you do have to keep that in mind. He's definitely a very talented player, so that's going to obviously create an impact. Running back core also loses a lot. Darion Ely, the top running back in the backfield, is leaving. He will not be around next season. Put up nearly 1,000 yards of offense and 7 touchdowns. Snoop Connor, the second running back who put up just over 700 yards and 13 touchdowns last season, is also gone. And Henry Parrish Jr. is transferring away. So your top 3 running backs from last season are all gone. So, offensively, this team has got multiple question marks. The receiving core also is losing a lot. Dontario Drummond, your top receiver, is gone, who put up just over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. Braylon Sanders, your second receiver, is gone. Last season, he put up over 500 yards. And Pearson, your third wideout, is gone as well, which he put up just over 400 yards of offense on the season. So this team, there are a lot of losses here. This is a significant amount of losses for a football team. You lose 2 on the offensive line, 2 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 3 in the secondary. So offensively, you lose a lot, and defensively, you lose a lot as well. So this is a significant amount of losses, and you got to consider too, returning production is crucial in predicting how a team is going to do the next season. If there's a lot of good experience and a lot of players that are coming back for the next season, that's a good sign that the team could be good, and that's what we saw out of Ole Miss after 2020. There was a lot of talent returning, and it was pretty clear as day that the Rebels were going to be good last year. But heading into 2022 now, it's a different story. A lot of those experienced players are now gone, and this is going to be a younger team next season. They got a whole bunch of transfers coming in, which is going to help as well. But considering, this team is going to look a lot different going into next season. Definitely something to keep in mind if you're an Ole Miss fan or trying to predict how this team is going to go. So it brings up the question, how high is the ceiling for this team? This team isn't going to win an SEC title next season. I can tell you that right now. That's clear. But, this team, it could be tough. 6 wins, I think, is very manageable for Ole Miss next season. But I think the ceiling for this team is probably, I'd say, 10 wins. So 6 to 10 wins is probably your best range. If you can get to a bowl game next season, especially the young roster like you're going to have, that's a good sign for the future, I would say. So, you do have to take that into consideration. This team could become a contender again, potentially make a run in a couple of seasons when they got some of that experience again. But going into next season, this team is not going to have a lot of experience. So that's just something you got to keep in mind and have an open mind about. But looking at the transfer portal and recruiting, these are just 8 of the most, I would say, significant players in the transfer portal or involved in it for the Rebels. Jackson Dart coming in from USC, that's a good bring in for sure. He's a 5-star out of high school. He really hasn't played a whole lot, but with USC, he did play decently when he did. So, Jackson Dart, he definitely shows tremendous upside and potential. I'm very interested to see how he does next season, and he's going to have a huge influence on how this team is next year. Jared Ivey, an edge rushers coming in from Georgia Tech. That's definitely a good landing there. And all eight of these players are significant. And the Rebels are bringing in most of these guys. So that's going to be huge. Smith, defensive back, is transferring out. You got two tight ends coming in. You got one from Auburn and one from USC. You got Tylen Knight, defensive back, going off to Southern Miss. So you do lose a couple of defensive backs who are transferring out. But otherwise, offensively, you got a couple of tight ends coming in. You got a linebacker, Troy Brown, definitely shows potential coming in from Central Michigan, and Mason Brooks, an offensive tackle coming in from Western Kentucky. And don't forget Jackson Dart. So, the transfer portal is done. It's been good for Ole Miss. They certainly have got a lot of players that are leaving as well. But overall, the transfer portal has benefited Ole Miss so far this offseason. Recruiting-wise, this team is 23rd overall in the nation, which doesn't look bad, but they're 10th in the SEC. They got 5 4-stars coming in and 13 3-stars. That said, let's look at your schedule now going into next season. And obviously, being in the SEC, you're going to have a brutal schedule no matter what. And this team, if you're looking at your SEC schedule, you got to play Kentucky. They're going to be good. Auburn could be good. LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, Arkansas, even Mississippi State could be good as well. So, the SEC schedule is going to be tough. But your non-conference games are not terribly difficult. Troy, Central Arkansas, Tulsa, Georgia Tech, all 4 of those games are very winnable for Ole Miss. Georgia Tech being on the road potentially is your toughest one there. And, Georgia Tech isn't even that good. So, you should get some easy wins there with your non-conference games. That's going to help. But your conference schedule it's tough. Kentucky, once again, you got Auburn, LSU. Honestly, all of those SEC games except for Vanderbilt are going to be ones that I would say are going to be close. But that said, let's look at the first half of your schedule. Troy, easy win. Central Arkansas, easy win. Georgia Tech on the road. I'm going to put that in yellow, meaning I'm going to favor Ole Miss, but it could be. I'm not as certain that that's going to be a win. I'm pretty confident that Ole Miss is going to beat Georgia Tech, with it being on the road. Might as well put it in yellow. Tulsa, easy win. Kentucky, I'm going to favor the Wildcats in that game. Kentucky is definitely looking better than Ole Miss, returning production-wise going into next season. I think Kentucky Wildcats are also losing a lot of talent, but they're not losing anywhere near as much as Ole Miss is going into next season. So I'll favor Kentucky in that game. Vanderbilt, easy win, despite it being on the road. Vanderbilt, that's a team that just, it's tough on them being in the SEC. And, with it being on the road, I'm still going to favor Ole Miss and put that game in green. But look at the second half now. You got Auburn, LSU. Both games I'm going to favor the Rebels in, but definitely close. Texas A&M, Alabama, and Arkansas, I'm going to put those in orange, meaning I'm going to slightly favor those teams to beat Ole Miss. Texas A&M on the road, I'm pretty confident with that one. Aggies could be good next season. They should be good. Alabama, of course. Alabama's Alabama, and they're gonna continue to be a contender next season for sure. If you thought they were good in 2021, that team is returning a lot of key players, and moving into 2022, things look great for the Crimson Tide. And Arkansas on the road, that one potentially could be close, but even the Razorbacks and Arkansas and Kentucky are both really similar in that both teams are losing. Both teams were surprise teams last season, but both teams are losing a decent amount of talent, but not a lot. Like, if you look at Ole Miss was kind of a surprise team I wouldn't say they were a surprise team because I expected them to be good, as do many other people, but Ole Miss is losing a lot in comparison to Kentucky or Arkansas. So it'll be interesting seeing how Kentucky and Arkansas do next season, but I'm going to favor the Razorbacks against Ole Miss right now. And Mississippi State to finish out the season, I'll favor Ole Miss in that game to win the Egg Bowl as of right now, with it being at home. Mississippi State, I don't expect them to be terribly good either. So, they'll be good, but I don't know if they're going to be up to a high standard, getting more than 7 wins next year. So record projection for Ole Miss, 7-5 to 10-2, kind of a wide range. I think the ceiling is 10-2 for this team, but I do expect this team to definitely at least get 6 or 7 wins. They should for sure. With Jackson Dart at quarterback, I think he's a very talented player and very capable of leading this team to a good season. So 7-5 to 10-2 is my predicted range. Let me know your thoughts and comments below on this team, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.